that's different than any of us have experienced before in our own communities. And so I was really gratified by all of the beautiful gathas and haiku that you wrote during this past week. You didn't have very much time, I know, because the message didn't get out to you until Friday. But I want to start with those things because they're so helpful. Sorry, this hair is bothering me. But let me begin with this poem that showed up on an email chain that I follow. It's suggestions and writings from people who are members of the Order of Inner Being from all over the world. And this poem showed up. It was written by someone, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, named Zen-to-go. And this is what he or she wrote. "I can't breathe," said George Floyd, the knee of 400 years of racism on his neck. "I can't breathe," said the woman with fear in her eyes, her lungs attacked by coronavirus as she was put onto the ventilator. "I can't breathe," said the nurse, exhausted after a long shift, sweating under a hot surgical mask and foggy goggles. "I can't breathe," said the young man, poisoned by a toxic drug supply and generations of trauma and loss. "I can't breathe," said the 100,000 dead Americans, a nation and a world in mourning. "I can't breathe," said cities choked in smoke from a planet on fire. "Breathe, my dear," said the Buddha of our time, reminding us of the way to love and healing and transformation. "Breathe, my dear," said the beloved community, grieving and waking up together. "Breathe, my dear," said Mother Earth, and let the oceans, mountains, and forests embrace you. Right now, when it seems so hard just to breathe, right now, just breathe. So that poem reminds me of one of the, let me find it. One of the things that was sent, and I think it was sent by, I have too many pages here, I'm sorry. It was sent by Ellen, and I call this her Just This Gata, because that's kind of what she called it. And she wrote, "All I can do is the next right thing, and the next, and the next." I think that, is very much like what the poem is telling us to do. Just do what you can, just breathe. And Cornell's Gata is similar as well. Cornell wrote, "Putting on my mask, I am aware that my well-being is not separate from the well-being of others. Breathing in and breathing out, I'm grateful for interbeing." So while I'm on this page, I'll read. I remember that I said to you all last week when I was talking about writing a gata, that the thing that I am the least, or was the least mindful of, was eating my breakfast. So this is the gata I came up with, and it's very reminiscent of the contemplations we read at retreats before we eat, but it's much simpler and easier for me to remember. So I said, this food is a gift of the universe. I vow to eat mindfully and gratefully savor every bite. So continuing with some more gathas, Catherine wrote a couple of gathas. Slicing an apple, juicy and sweet, taking a mindful bite, crunchy and tasty. And then she wrote, the day is done. I am grateful for my blessings. I smile as I go to sleep. Sweet dreams. I like that. I start my day usually with the morning gatha, waking up this morning, I smile, etc. So I like this idea of smiling as I go to sleep. There'll be a nice in circle for the day. Sarah wrote a gatha that I like a lot. She says, resting on the couch, rejuvenating my tired feet, I rejoice in the perfect impermanence of a clean house. That's a good one. I think we all can resonate with that. Nick got really inspired and wrote a lot of gathas, and I will read most of them. This is the first one he wrote. Every moment is an opportunity for awakening. I can always pause, breathe, and mindfully look around, understanding the Buddha nature is never far away. That's a really great reminder, Nick. Thank you. Pause, breathe, and mindfully look around. Yeah. And then here's another one from Nick. When in times of doubt, I recall that I can sink into the four immeasurables: mudita, joy; maitri, loving kindness; upeksha, equanimity; karuna, compassion. These four trees eternally bloom with luscious fruits. Breathing deeply, I taste their fruits and share with all beings. The seed of the universe lies in this moment. Practicing the joy of presence, desire, and craving dissolve. I take refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. With refuges like this, what harm can come to me on the way? We will post these gathas and haiku somewhere, probably on Facebook, maybe on the website. We haven't talked about that. But I think they're just really, really wonderful. So let me read a couple of haiku. All of these are just another way to be creatively together. So Catherine's haiku, the sun is shining, a butterfly flutters by, a beautiful day. Here's a haiku from Nick. Sitting meditation, watching thoughts pass by like clouds, mind becoming sky. That's something we talk about in our meditations all the time, is allowing thoughts to just be like clouds floating by in the sky. So that haiku really captures that. And then continuing with the sky, he said, The sky as teacher. Remember impermanence. Thanks, Dharma cloud forms. There are a lot of, I noticed that a lot of you took my suggestion to write being inspired by nature. This is not a haiku, but this is a very short piece of a poem from Maya Angelou. And you might be familiar with this poem because of the last line that I'm going to read. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. I'm just going to read a couple more haiku, and then I'll talk a little bit more. So this is Lisa's haiku. Universe in flow, like tiny buds after winter, new growth, blooming change. Christie's haiku. A constant movement. Let me start over. This is about the wind. A constant movement, weightless strength creating change, boundless, expansive. And this is a haiku that I wrote this afternoon. Sadness engulfs me. Compassion opens my heart. I am here for you. I think it was probably that particular haiku that had me think about the meditation that we did earlier. I have always found Lojong meditation very, very challenging. And so when Jennifer presented it to us a few weeks ago, I have to admit I had trouble with it because I think I just wasn't ready yet to think or to be aware that I could transform those really difficult energies. Somehow, the things that we're all experiencing and the things that we're seeing now have convinced me that not only can I help with this transformation, but I can do it from a place of love and from a place that does not harm myself. I don't have to carry these burdens. But I think we do need to acknowledge them, because when we don't acknowledge things, we can't do anything about it. And when we do acknowledge them, we have some tools from our practice. As Cornell said at the beginning, Thich Nhat Hanh still is an activist. He is still very, very active in promoting awareness of climate change. He's still very much aware and promoting awareness of social injustice. He is just an incredible example, an embodiment of the Bodhisattva values that we say at the end of our meetings. Countless beings we vow to free, ceaseless afflictions we vow to end. That's a pretty big commitment. And in fact, I have a friend who was a regular at the noon meditations who couldn't say that vow because he didn't feel that he could be honest and truthful and say that vow. So I understand that. It's a big commitment. But it isn't out of reach. It's not something we cannot do. I think of it like the 5 mindfulness trainings or the 14 mindfulness trainings. These are guidelines. They're something to aspire to. And the more we work with it, the more mindful we become, the more likely we are to follow those guidelines more closely. I know from my own experience in practicing with the 14 mindfulness trainings and the 5, that every time I read them, I recognize that I have made progress and there's still something to do. But I think it's important to remember that we're making progress on this path. And in fact, we are supported on this path by one another, by our teachings, by our friends on the path. We have a lot of support. So in Thich Nhat Hanh's book, which he called Calming the Fearful Mind, it's really written, the subtitle is a Zoom response to terrorism. And even though we aren't exactly experiencing terrorism at this time, still what he says in this section is very relevant. This book was written in 2005, or published in 2005. So it's 15 years old, but it could have been written today. This section is called America's Suffering. It starts out with a sentence that talks about succeeding in uprooting terrorism. And he says, the first thing we need to practice is listening deeply to our own citizens. And remember, he's talking about the United States. So many of us feel we are victims of discrimination, injustice, and exclusion. Poor people, the homeless, minorities, immigrants, those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, Jews, Muslim, the elderly, people with HIV/AIDS, and many others often feel excluded. America has not yet been able to listen to the suffering of her own people. He goes on to say, there is too much suffering already in this country. We busy ourselves doing as many things as possible, taking refuge in doing more and more, faster and faster. The more we do, the greater the suffering becomes. People suffer to such an extent that they can't bear to experience more suffering. We aren't sleeping well at night, and we're not enjoying ourselves during the day. We can't focus on the suffering in other countries when we suffer so much ourselves. Touching more suffering only overwhelms and paralyzes us. That sounds pretty grim and pretty truthful. So he gives some instructions about how to suffer less. And in fact, in the Buddhist teachings that we follow, a big part of it is learning how to suffer mindfully, how to suffer without hitting ourselves with the second and third arrows. And so this reminds me of a technique, I guess I'll call it, that is taught by a lot of Buddhist teachers. I learned it from Tara Brach, and it's called RAIN. The first R refers to recognize. Recognize what is happening. Recognize what is so. The A is for acknowledge. Acknowledge what is so. Acknowledge what is happening. The I is investigate. Look into it. See if we can find where the roots are. What are the causes? And the N is for naturally I forgot the word, but it means letting go. It's transformational. So I'll think of it probably after we do this, after we finish this talk. But anyway, actually I might have that note right here. So the point is that we can transform these things within ourselves by using what we already know, by being with whatever is true, acknowledging it, recognizing it, and looking into the causes of it. And then we can also be reminded, oh, thank you, Billy, nurture is the N. Once we know what the causes are, we can nurture the seeds that will help to transform what is happening. So it's recognize, acknowledge, investigate, nurture. Thank you, Billy. One of my favorite quotes from the Buddha, I have said to you guys many, many times. I have this framed on my desk so that I can see it and remind myself frequently. Looking at the way things are as they are now, recognizing what is so, I remember this: when conditions are sufficient, things manifest. Now that line does not mean that things are always going to be positive. When conditions are sufficient, things manifest. It could be things you don't want to manifest because the conditions are there that cause something to manifest. If you planted a weed in your garden, that's what would manifest. So when we are nurturing the seeds of fear and grief and violence within us, that is what will manifest. And on the other hand, the other side of that is when we nurture love, compassion, peace within ourselves, then that is what will begin to manifest in our lives, and it will naturally ripple out to affect those we come in contact with. The second part of that is when conditions are not sufficient, things do not manifest. And so if I look at the current situation, that means to me that if the conditions for peaceful protest, if the conditions for change, if the conditions for transformation are not sufficient, then those things will not manifest. And that says to me, or at least the next part follows, when things do not manifest, they are waiting for conditions to be sufficient. This, to me, this is so important to me, because it says to me that if things are not manifesting, the conditions are not there yet. And then I think, can I help to make the conditions sufficient for things to manifest? And the obvious answer is yes, I can do that. I can do something. So that is, excuse me just a minute. That is a very important, to me, that is one of the most important teachings I've ever read from the Buddha. When conditions are sufficient, things manifest. When conditions are not sufficient, things do not manifest. When things do not manifest, they are waiting for conditions to be sufficient. It's hopeful as well, because it says to me that nothing is ever unchangeable. And we know that because everything is impermanent. And because it's impermanent, we can do something to provide conditions that will manifest peace and love. And the 5 mindfulness trainings are the perfect answer to that. Deep listening, loving speech, reverence for life. All of those mindfulness trainings give us the tools that we need to begin to manifest the conditions that will be sufficient for peace to prevail, for transformation to happen. And even though when I chose this theme for June, Creatively Together, it was well before all of these, well, it was during the COVID crisis, but nothing else was looming. And so I thought initially that maybe Creatively Together was a little bit frivolous. But now I think, no, we're going to have to get creative to make the changes that need to be done in our society. We need to be creative to create the conditions that will be sufficient for these things to manifest. And so the next, let me just say, if you didn't write a haiku or a gata, it's not too late. You can still do that. There were some instructions in the weekly message that went out last week, and there's also a YouTube video. So, you know, you could still do it and send it in. Just send it to info@dallasmeditationcenter.com or bobby@dallasmeditationcenter.com. But then your assignment for next week, I feel like I'm going to say something like that Mission Impossible thing, if you choose to take it, is to draw a mandala. Now, a mandala is simply a circle that is made, I'm going to say it this way, a circle that we make sacred with our intention. And so during the week, and hopefully this will get to you Wednesday, maybe Thursday, you will receive something you can print. It'll have a couple of circles. One circle will be mostly empty. Maybe there'll be one line in it that you can kind of play off of. The other circle will have something in it, maybe a half done or something like that, and you're invited to finish it. Obviously, you can always do your own from the very beginning. And a mandala can be drawn with crayons, with pencils, with markers. You could even use things in nature. You could go pick up some leaves and twigs and stuff and put them in this circle. But it has to do with your intention. So before you begin your circle, think about what is the intention that you want to manifest? What is the intention that you want to show up? and then you can begin. Now, I will say to you that I've drawn lots of mandalas in my time, and I love doing it, but I rarely know exactly what's going to be in that circle. I might have a vague idea. I might think I want to put a lotus in there, maybe. But often, even if I start thinking I'm going to draw a lotus to represent peace or calmness or whatever, it will morph into something else. So just follow your heart and let your pencil or your pen, just let it be guided by what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. And I promise you, it'll be not only fun, but you might even be amazed at what you produce. So next week is drawing a mandala. And once again, you can either take a picture and send it to us at those same two email addresses, or I guess you could take a picture and scan it and send it to us. However, however you can do it, that would be great. So I think I'm done. Thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to those of you who sent in the gathas and the haiku. I think they're just amazing, and I didn't read all of them just because of time constraints. But I want you to know how much I appreciated your thought. That really there's so much, obviously, very thoughtful intention went into these, and I really appreciate it. So I guess I'll turn it back to you, Cornell. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby, for your talk, and thank you for all of you who found your way over here to Zoom. I'd say thank you to all of you on YouTube, but there's no one on the channel on YouTube at the moment. But yeah, great talk. This reminds me of so many, Bobby, thank you for, I don't know, kind of along what I'd said, how we're called to be active and stuff, and how we can be creative in so many ways, and our words and our actions are the ground on which we stand. We've heard that so many times over the past few weeks. So nice thing, I did catch most of Bobby's talk. I did record most of the video, so we will put that up later, since it won't be on YouTube at the moment. But anyway, so just a few announcements. There is at one of the Wake Up, the young adults meetings, not this week, but I think next week. Hopefully we'll have some information about that soon. In case some of you want to join, they will be joined by one of the monastics from Magnolia Grove, Sister True Pearl, Sister Boyneem, wonderful speaker, will be a guest at the Wake Up group on their online broadcast next week, Tuesday. But just a reminder that this group and this organization is supported fully by the donations of the community, and that community is you and me. So please do participate in that. The links for that are dallasmeditationcenter.com/give, or you can text the word mindful to the number 44321. And normally I would say I will post the link to the Zoom meeting here in the chat window, but you're already here, so I'll just say hang on here, because after Nick does the closing bells and our closing vows, Bodhisattva vows, then we will begin our portion of the meeting that is sharing and discussion. So with that, I'll send back over to you, Nick.